Welcome to the King Tales. Thank you for the love and support. Let's dive in. Months passed gently in Aquos, and with each passing week Omalika's joy quietly grew. The palace adjusted to her needs with tender care. The queen ensured that she rested often, that nourishing meals were prepared, and that no burden touched her shoulders. Yet Omalika never allowed herself to become distant or fragile. She still walked in the gardens each morning, though more slowly now, one hand resting lightly against her growing belly. She often spoke softly to the child within her, whispering stories of dusty roads, market laughter, and the simple hut in Uli where love had first taken root. Madhu became even more attentive. He accompanied her whenever he could, listening carefully to the healer's advice and watching for the smallest sign of discomfort. At night, he would sit beside her and speak to their unborn child about honesty, courage, and kindness. You will inherit lands, he would say gently, but more importantly, you must inherit a good heart. Omalika would smile, knowing that whatever their child became, royal or simple, the foundation would always be love. News of the pregnancy spread across the kingdom, bringing quiet celebration. Elders offered prayers. Villagers from Uli sent baskets of dried fruits, woven cloth, and handwritten blessings. Even Nemedu and her daughter sent gifts, carefully prepared and humbly delivered, with messages filled with gratitude and remorse. Omalika accepted each one graciously, holding no trace of bitterness. She believed that a child born into peace should not inherit old grudges. When the time of birth finally came, it arrived not with chaos, but with steady determination. The palace midwives walked calmly through the night while the queen remained by her daughter's side. Madhu waited outside the chamber, pacing softly, whispering prayers under his breath. The hours felt endless. Then, just before dawn, a strong cry filled the air, a sound small yet powerful enough to change the world of everyone who heard it. A healthy child had been born. Madhu fell to his knees in relief when he was called inside. He approached slowly, eyes shining, as Omalika lay resting, exhausted but radiant. In her arms rested their child, wrapped in soft cloth, blinking at the new world. When Madhu held the baby for the first time, he felt something deeper than pride, he felt purpose. The king and queen stood nearby, their faces glowing with gratitude. The line of Aquos continued, but more importantly, the legacy of humility and kindness continued with it. The birth was celebrated across the kingdom, yet Omalika insisted the celebration remain meaningful rather than extravagant. She requested that food be distributed to villages in need and that gifts be sent to Uli in appreciation of the community that had shaped her early journey. "Let our joy feed others," she said softly. Years later, when their child grew old enough to ask about the past, Madhu and Omalika told the story honestly, not as a tale of power, but as a lesson. They spoke of jealousy and forgiveness, of hardship and patience, of the quiet strength it takes to endure injustice without losing one's heart. And they reminded their child that crowns may rest on the head, but character must live in the soul. Thus the story did not end with a wedding, a ceremony, or even a birth. It continued in daily acts of kindness, in fair judgments, in shared meals, and in gentle words spoken when anger could have risen instead. Aquos prospered under rulers who valued humility over pride, and Uli remembered forever that greatness can dwell in the most ordinary places. And so the tale of Omalika and Madhu became more than a story, it became wisdom passed from generation to generation. That love chosen freely is stronger than power given by birth. That forgiveness heals deeper than revenge ever could. And that the quiet heart, when it refuses to harden, will one day shine brighter than any crown. The drums echoed across the valley as the villagers gathered in the palace courtyard. Fear and curiosity filled the air. No one knew what would happen next. The child stood quietly in the center, her small hands folded, her eyes calm and shining like morning dew. Midday and Bananle watched from a distance. Their hearts, once filled with anger, now trembled with something they did not understand. The sky slowly darkened, though it was still afternoon. A strong wind swept through the village, lifting dust into the air. The elders began to whisper. "This is no ordinary child," the oldest elder said, his voice shaking. Suddenly, the ground beneath them glowed faintly. The child raised her head, and a soft light surrounded her. It was not a frightening light, but a warm and powerful one. The wind stopped. The drums fell silent. Even the birds in the trees became still. A voice, gentle yet mighty, seemed to echo from everywhere at once. Those who try to bury destiny only bury their own peace. Midday fell to his knees. Bananle covered his face in fear. They realized too late that jealousy had blinded them. The child turned toward them, not with anger, but with sadness. "I never wanted your harm," she said softly. "I only wanted to belong." Tears rolled down their faces. The villagers watched in silence as the truth unfolded before them. The king stepped forward, his crown trembling on his head. "This child," he declared, "is protected by forces greater than our understanding." From that day on, the village changed. The people learned that envy can destroy families, but forgiveness can rebuild kingdoms. And the child, once rejected, grew to become a symbol of unity and hope, the one whose destiny could never be buried. But little did they know, this was only the beginning of our story. The palace bells rang through the evening air, announcing a gathering that would be remembered for generations. Torches were lit along the courtyard walls, their flames dancing like spirits awakened by truth. The child stood beside the king now, no longer alone, yet still wrapped in quiet mystery. That night, the royal priest studied the ancient scrolls kept beneath the palace floor. His fingers trembled as he unrolled a fragile parchment sealed with a forgotten mark. His eyes widened. "There was a prophecy," he whispered. "A child born under a silent storm, a child whose tears would cleanse a divided kingdom." Outside, clouds rolled across the sky though no thunder followed. The child stepped forward once more. She looked at the people who once feared her, and instead of anger, she lifted her hands in blessing. A sudden rain began to fall, soft, gentle, pure. It washed over the village roofs, the dusty roads, the hardened hearts. The villagers felt something shift inside them. Old grudges faded. Bitterness loosened its grip. Midday and Bananle approached her slowly. Their pride had broken. "We were wrong," Midday said, his voice heavy with regret. "Can you forgive us?" Bananle added, unable to meet her eyes. The child smiled, not with victory, but with compassion. "Forgiveness is the beginning of healing," she replied. From that moment, peace slowly returned to the kingdom. Crops grew stronger than before. Laughter returned to the marketplace. And the story of the child spread beyond the hills and rivers, carried by travelers and storytellers. Yet far away, in the shadowed mountains, a mysterious figure listened to these tales with narrowed eyes. "If the prophecy has awakened," the figure murmured, "then the balance of power has changed." And somewhere in the darkness, a new challenge began to rise. High in the shadowed mountains, the mysterious figure stepped out from behind a curtain of mist. He was tall and cloaked in dark woven fabric that shimmered like raven feathers. His name was Zerut, a sorcerer once banished from the kingdom for seeking power beyond wisdom. He had heard the whispers of the prophecy long ago. A child born under a silent storm, the light that cannot be buried. Zerut's eyes burned with quiet fury. He had spent years gathering ancient knowledge, waiting for the moment when destiny would reveal itself. And now it had. Back in the kingdom, the child began to dream strange dreams. In her sleep, she saw rivers turning silver, mountains splitting open, and a shadow stretching across the land. Each morning she woke with a heavy feeling in her chest. The royal priest noticed the change. "You have seen something," he said gently. She nodded. "A storm is coming. Not of rain, but of choices." Days later, the sky grew restless. Winds howled through the palace towers. Messengers arrived breathless from the northern villages. A dark mist moves through the mountain paths, they reported. Crops wither where it passes. Animals flee in fear. The king gathered his council, worry lining his face. Soldiers prepared their shields. Drums of warning echoed once more across the valley. But the child did not tremble. This battle will not be won by swords alone, she said quietly. The darkness feeds on fear. That evening, as the first wave of black mist crept toward the kingdom gates, she walked forward alone. The villagers gasped, but she raised her hand calmly. From her heart, a radiant glow spread outward, brighter than before. The mist hissed as it touched the light, twisting and retreating like smoke in a strong wind. Far in the mountains, Zerath felt it. So, she has grown stronger, he muttered. He lifted his staff toward the sky. Thunder cracked at last. If she is the light, he declared, then I will become the storm. And with that, lightning split the heavens, signaling that the true clash between shadow and destiny had only just begun. The lightning did not fade. It lingered in the sky like a warning written in fire. That night, the child stood alone on the palace balcony, watching the mountains. The wind tugged gently at her hair, but she did not move. She could feel him now, the storm maker. His anger was sharp, but beneath it was something deeper, pain. Inside the palace library, the royal priest searched through older scrolls, ones no one had opened in decades. At last, he found a record sealed with black wax. Zerath, he read aloud softly. Once a guardian of balance. Once a protector of the sacred flame. The king frowned. A guardian. Yes, the priest nodded. Before he was banished, he sought to control the sacred flame instead of protect it. He believed power should not be shared, only commanded. On the balcony, the child closed her eyes. A sudden vision flooded her mind. She saw a younger Zerath, standing proudly among elders. She saw him offering ideas that were rejected. She saw his frustration grow into obsession. She saw the moment he tried to seize the sacred flame, and the explosion of light that cast him out of the kingdom. When she opened her eyes, tears shimmered there. He was not born evil, she whispered. He was wounded. The next morning, before the council could prepare another defense, the child made a decision. I must go to the mountains, she said. The king shook his head immediately. It is too dangerous. If I stay, she replied gently, the storm will only grow stronger. This is not a war of strength. It is a test of truth. Midday and Banale stepped forward. We once acted out of jealousy, Midday said. Let us not repeat that mistake. Let us stand with her. And so, a small group set out toward the mountains, not with an army, but with courage. As they climbed higher, the air grew colder. The trees thinned. Dark clouds swirled overhead. At the mountain's peak, Zerath waited, his staff crackling with restless energy. You finally come, he said, his voice echoing like distant thunder. I did not come to fight you, the child answered. Zerath laughed bitterly. All light says that, until it tries to erase the shadow. She stepped closer, her glow steady but calm. You were once a guardian, she said softly. You wanted the flame to protect the kingdom. But fear twisted your purpose. His grip tightened on his staff. They feared my strength. They feared losing balance, she replied. Power without wisdom destroys what it tries to defend. The storm roared louder. Lightning flashed around them. The villagers below watched the mountain in terror. Zerath raised his staff high, summoning a bolt of lightning, but before he could release it, the child did something unexpected. She lowered her light. Not in defeat, but in trust. For the first time in years, the storm hesitated. And in that fragile pause between thunder and silence, everything hung in balance. The lightning hung frozen in the sky, crackling with tension, as if the world itself held its breath. The child stepped closer, her hand extended, her light unwavering. "Zeroth," she said again, her voice firm yet gentle, "you were never meant to destroy. You were meant to protect. You still can." For a long moment, Zeroth's eyes flickered, anger, pain, regret, and longing all tangled together. His staff trembled in his grasp. The storm around him seemed to mirror the conflict within, flashes of brilliant light giving way to ominous shadows. I was cast out," Zeroth whispered, voice breaking. "I gave everything, and they betrayed me. I have nothing left but power. And power without purpose is empty," the child replied softly. "Look at what your anger has done. You've hurt others, but it's not too late to make it right." The wind whipped around them, tearing at cloaks and hair, rattling loose stones on the mountaintop. Zeroth's shoulders shook as he lowered his staff slightly. Lightning circled him, restless and wild, but the energy seemed to respond to her calm. "I trusted, and they feared me," he muttered, almost to himself. "I trusted, and they turned away." She stepped closer, her glow illuminating the shadows on his face. "Then trust again," she said. "Not them, not the world, but yourself. Let the flame be what it was always meant to be, a beacon, not a weapon." The storm paused, the thunder trembling like a hesitant heart. Zeroth's staff wavered, and a single bolt of lightning splintered into the sky, it then vanished, leaving only a faint shimmer. He fell to his knees, exhaustion and relief mingling. The child moved beside him, offering her hand. "It is not too late, Zeroth," she said. "You can still choose redemption." The storm finally broke, rain falling gently over the mountains, washing away the anger that had lingered for decades. Below, the villagers could see the clouds parting, revealing a sun that shone brighter than it had in years. Birds returned to the trees, singing as if in celebration. Zeroth took a deep breath, looking at the child with newfound clarity. I will protect, not punish," he said, voice steadying. "I will restore what I have endangered." The child smiled softly. "Then together, we can heal the kingdom." And as the rain eased, the mountains seemed to sigh, the storm dissipating into a gentle mist. The power that had once threatened destruction now became a quiet force of renewal. The kingdom below would never forget this day, the day when anger was met with courage, and darkness was calmed by light. The child and Zeroth began the descent, side by side, ready to return not as enemies or strangers, but as guardians of balance and protectors of the life that had waited patiently for their wisdom. The mountains had tested them, the storm had challenged them, but at last, a new dawn rose, one of forgiveness, hope, and harmony. As Zeroth and the child reached the lower slopes, the kingdom below began to emerge from the morning mist. Villagers paused in their walk, eyes widening as they saw the two figures descending together, the storm's fury behind them now replaced by a calm, golden light that seemed to flow from their presence. Word spread quickly, the same way news had traveled in whispers through Oli long ago, and soon the streets were filled with people gathering, unsure what they would witness. When Zeroth stepped into the main square, the tension that had gripped the kingdom for years seemed to lift. Children ran forward cautiously, curiosity outweighing fear. Elders leaned on their staffs, nodding in recognition that this was not the same man who had once brought terror. Guards lowered their weapons slightly, their eyes wide with wonder. The child moved forward, her glow gentle and reassuring. She raised her hand, calling for attention. "People of this kingdom," she said, her voice carrying across the square, clear and calm, "we come not to punish, but to heal. Not to rule, but to guide. For too long, fear has held sway here. Today, we restore trust and hope." Zeroth, still kneeling for a moment, rose and nodded. His eyes, once filled with anger and shadow, now reflected determination and remorse. "I have caused harm," he admitted. "I let my pain dictate my actions, and for that I am sorry." But I am ready to make amends, to serve, and to protect. Not with power born of fear, but with strength guided by wisdom. A murmur spread through the crowd. Some gasped, others cried out in disbelief, but all felt the weight of his sincerity. Slowly, the villagers stepped closer, their hesitation giving way to cautious hope. The child extended her hand toward Zerath. "Together, we will ensure no one lives in fear again," she said. "We will rebuild what was broken, strengthen what was weak, and show that courage and kindness are the true marks of leadership." Zerath looked at her, the storm of years lifting from his shoulders. He took her hand, and the golden light surrounding them seemed to touch every corner of the square. The villagers, sensing a change unlike any before, began to cheer, softly at first, then with a swelling joy that filled the streets and echoed into the hills. In the days that followed, Zerath walked alongside the people, helping to repair what had been damaged, listening to their stories, and learning the rhythms of life he had once overlooked. The child guided him with patience, teaching him the value of humility, compassion, and foresight. Slowly, the kingdom transformed, not through force or decree, but through the quiet strength of hearts willing to change. And though the memory of the storm lingered in whispers, it became a story not of fear, but of redemption, a tale passed down from elder to child, of how anger can be tamed, mistakes can be forgiven, and true power lies in love, patience, and courage. The kingdom, once shadowed by wrath, now glowed under a new dawn, brighter than any had seen before. Over the following months, the kingdom began to flourish in ways no one could have imagined. Villagers rebuilt homes and marketplaces, but now with care and beauty that reflected pride and cooperation. Fields yielded richer crops, not only because the land was tended well, but because hope had returned to the people's hearts. Children played freely, their laughter a constant reminder that fear no longer ruled their lives. Zerath, once feared, became a figure of guidance and protection. He no longer carried the heavy weight of anger, but instead carried responsibility with humility. When disputes arose, he listened first, judged last. He walked alongside the villagers in the fields, shared meals with them, and celebrated their small victories as if they were his own. Each day, he grew more patient, his past mistakes etched into his mind as lessons rather than burdens. The child remained by his side, her presence a beacon of wisdom and calm. She encouraged the villagers to speak, to share, to heal old grievances. Under her guidance, schools were established where children learned both reading and the values of honesty, courage, and kindness. Elderly storytellers were invited to teach the young about history, tradition, and the power of unity. Word of this transformation spread beyond the kingdom's borders. Travelers spoke of a place where leaders walked among the people, where justice was tempered with compassion, and where even the smallest act of kindness was honored. Nobles from distant lands came, not to rule, but to learn. Scholars recorded the events, ensuring that generations yet to come would know the story of a kingdom that rose from fear to hope, from chaos to harmony. Zerath and the child, too, found balance in their own lives. They spent mornings in council with village leaders and afternoons in quiet reflection. Evenings were reserved for the people, for music, stories, and shared meals. Slowly, the child's glow, once a mysterious source of awe, became a symbol of the kingdom itself, steady, luminous, and full of promise. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, casting golden light across the village, Zerath and the child stood atop a small rise overlooking the fields. The air was calm, carrying the scent of fresh earth and blossoms. "Look at this," the child said softly, her hand resting on Zerath's arm. "This is what can grow from patience, care, and trust." Zerath nodded, feeling a warmth that had been foreign for so long. "It is more than I ever imagined," he said. "I thought power came from fear and strength alone. But now I see true power is in love, in humility, and in the courage to change." Below them, the villagers walked and laughed, tending to their lives with renewed hope. The kingdom, once shadowed by anger and misunderstanding, now shone with light that could not be dimmed. And in that quiet moment, Zeroth and the child understood fully that the storm had not destroyed them, it had taught them, shaped them, and ultimately, led them to a future brighter than any they could have imagined. Years passed, and the kingdom of Akwazi thrived like never before. The story of Madu and Omalika's return and the forgiveness shown in Uli became a legend taught to every child. Songs were sung of their courage, humility, and the power of love over pride. The marketplaces buzzed with life, the fields yielded bountiful harvest, and the palace gardens became a place where royalty and villagers alike found peace and joy. Omalika's child, a daughter named Amora, grew under the watchful eyes of both her parents and the people of the kingdom. She inherited her mother's gentle heart and her father's integrity. From an early age, she spent her mornings walking through the palace gardens, helping the servants, listening to the stories of the elders, and learning the ways of the world beyond wealth and titles. Her laughter became as familiar in the village streets as in the royal halls, a living reminder that humility and kindness were the true treasures of life. Madu continued to oversee the lands granted to him, but always with fairness and care. He visited Uli often, ensuring that the village and its people prospered. The villagers no longer whispered with doubt or jealousy, they spoke with admiration and love for the couple who had taught them that greatness could be gentle. Children would run to greet Madu and Omalika, and elders would nod in respect, knowing that true leadership had been shown to them, not through force, but through example. As Amora grew older, the royal family established programs to teach all children across the kingdom the lessons of her mother's journey. Schools were built that emphasized empathy, courage, and wisdom. Storytellers traveled from town to town recounting how a humble woman's kindness could change lives and restore honor. The kingdom learned that no wealth or title could replace a good heart, and no fear or cruelty could withstand patience and love. Omalika herself became a figure of inspiration throughout Akwazi. She held counsel with her mother, Queen Adai, to help guide young women in leadership, always reminding them that humility was not weakness, but strength. She and Madu worked side by side to ensure justice was fair, mercy was offered, and love remained at the center of every decision. Their union became a symbol that love could endure trials, that truth would always emerge, and that integrity was the foundation of lasting happiness. One quiet evening, many years later, Madu and Omalika sat in the same palace gardens where they had shared their first peaceful moments after returning from Uli. The stars twinkled overhead, and the night air was filled with the gentle hum of life in the kingdom. Their daughter, Amora, now a young woman, joined them, holding a small book of stories she had written, tales of courage, kindness, and the wisdom of her parents. "Mother, father," Amora said softly, her eyes shining, "I want to share these stories with every child in the kingdom. Let them know that love, humility, and courage can overcome even the greatest challenges." Omalika smiled, brushing her daughter's hair from her face. "That is the greatest gift you could give, my child," she whispered. Madu nodded, holding both their hands. "And remember," he said, his voice steady and warm, "no matter how small or humble you may feel, your actions, your heart, and your kindness will always leave a mark on the world." Under the moonlight, the family sat together, their hearts full. In that moment, the kingdom of Akwazi was not defined by its palaces or its wealth, but by the love and integrity of the people who lived within it. Generations would remember this story, the story of a humble woman who became a princess, a devoted husband who loved her for her heart, and a child born from the courage and love that changed the kingdom forever. And so, the legacy of Madu and Omalika endured, not in gold or power, but in the quiet, lasting truth that kindness, patience, and love are the greatest treasures of all. Years flowed gently on, and Amora grew into a young woman whose presence carried the quiet strength of her mother and the steadfast heart of her father. She walked the palace gardens with the same humility Omalika had shown, pausing to speak with servants, play with the children of the kingdom, and tend to the small animals that wandered the courtyards. Her laughter, bright and unpretentious, became a symbol of hope and continuity, a reminder that even royal blood could carry a heart unspoiled by pride. Under the guidance of Omalika and Madhu, Amora learned not only the duties of royalty but also the deeper lessons of life, that kindness could heal wounds, that patience often brought wisdom, and that true leadership meant listening before speaking. The people of Akwasi loved her not merely for her title, but for her openness, her empathy, and her unwavering commitment to justice and compassion. One day, as she walked through Uli with her parents, the villagers greeted her with joy and respect. The children ran to her, bringing small gifts of flowers, baskets of fruit, and handmade charms. Elders bowed, smiling at the young woman who carried forward the story of humility and love that had transformed their village so many years ago. Amora knelt among them, speaking gently, laughing warmly, and listening to their stories. "My daughter," Omalika said softly as they paused near the marketplace, "look at what has grown from love and patience. This is the world you inherit, not only a kingdom, but hearts that have been touched by kindness." Amora's eyes glimmered. "I understand now, mother. True strength does not roar. It nurtures, it forgives, it uplifts." Madhu placed a hand on her shoulder. "And your journey will be your own, my child. Remember, you carry not only our blood, but our lessons. Walk humbly, lead wisely, and your actions will echo longer than any crown." In the years that followed, Amora became a beacon of inspiration across Akwasi. Schools were named for her, teaching children the stories of her mother's courage and her father's integrity. Festivals celebrated the unity of palace and village, royalty and people, reminding all that love and humility could transform even the most complicated of lives. Omalika and Madhu watched their daughter flourish, proud yet serene, knowing that their story, the tale of a humble woman, a steadfast man, and a kingdom touched by mercy, had passed into the hands of the next generation. Together, they walked the gardens of the palace at sunset, the golden light washing over them, feeling the quiet certainty that life, in all its trials and triumphs, had rewarded those who remained true to their hearts. And so, the story came full circle, a tale of love, patience, integrity, and forgiveness, a story that would be told by storytellers, whispered by children, and remembered by generations. The legacy of Madhu and Omalika endured, not in titles or treasure, but in the hearts they had touched, the lives they had changed, and the kingdom they had helped transform into a place where love, kindness, and humility reigned supreme. The end.